Week 11 was a wild, comeback-filled week, so let's recap. This season has only gotten more and more interesting as time goes on, so let's look back on Week 11 and all its Hawk Tuah glory with our weekly vibe check where we rank every NFL team's week. The Colts and Saints are on bye, so no roasting the Saints this week. No, I'm not going to say that Jonathan Taylor has as many rushing touchdowns as the Saints have total touchdowns. No, I would never say that. Let's just do the vibe check. At number 30, the Cincinnati Bengals. Stop making me seem biased. I'm over it. What the f***? On a day where the defense actually kind of performed to a non-Swiss cheese degree, the offense had easily its worst day under Joe Flacco. They scored 12 points, and it could have been 14 had Chase Brown not had a 2-point conversion attempt that was clipboard slamming worthy. Elsewhere, Jamar Chase committed the ultimate crime of making me take Jalen Ramsey's side in an argument. Oh yeah, remember when I said the offense only scored 12 points? They also gave up 12 points on a pick six and a fumble return. The Bengals have won once since they started 2-0. And the Bengals have only won one game this year against a quarterback under the age of 40. If losing 34-12 to your most hated rival after a bye, and when your best player gets suspended for spitting on a player, doesn't get Zach Taylor fired this season, then nothing will. It's made worse by the fact that it doesn't even seem like the Bengals are trying to tank. At number 29, the Atlanta Falcons. This was one of the closer losses of the weekend. Of course, unless you ask the Atlanta Falcons defensive backs. Falcons defensive line, though, had a really strong performance as they limited the Panthers to 67 rushing yards and they sacked Bryce Young 5 times. Unfortunately, the secondary rewarded the defensive line by letting Bryce Young throw for more yards than he had in his previous 3 games put together. The offense? Well, let's just say Bijan Robinson might have to pick up an extra shift, as Michael Penix is now out for the year with an ACL injury, and Drake London is out for the foreseeable future with a PCL injury. Both of those injuries play perfect into the theme of the Falcons' season of damaging L's. A really tough performance overall for a team that doesn't even have its first-round pick next year. The Rams have it, and it's going to be an early pick. Oh boy. At number 28, the Los Angeles Chargers. What an absolute waste of a cross-country trip. Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater are both out for the year. That's not fun. Justin Herbert had 81 passing yards against an offense that didn't even have its number 2 overall pick of a cornerback in for this season. The Chargers also had 42 total rushing yards, exactly 50% of which came from Justin Herbert. Quentin Johnston? Another goose egg, baby. This was a classic trap game. The Chargers had a big week at home, and then they had to travel cross-country to play the Jags, who were also pretty inconsistent, and they shit the bed. Elsewhere, Trevor Penning sounds like he was named after what he should be doing to his own pink slip. The trenches on the other side were not much better, as the Jags had 192 combined rushing yards and 4 rushing touchdowns. The Chargers are now on bye, so they really need to think about what they've done. At number 27, the Cleveland Browns. Hey, at least First Take's got something to talk about for 2 hours besides the Dallas Cowboys. The big story from this game was that Dylan Gabriel suffered a concussion, meaning Shedeur Sanders got to come in and play like absolute piss. He had 4 completions on 16 attempts, an interception, a fumble, and a 27.4 PFF grade. On the bright side, Myles Garrett treated Lamar Jackson like ESPN treats anyone who thinks that Bronny Manziel isn't God's gift to mankind. It was an absolutely dreadful performance from a guy who is still gonna get every excuse in the world because he's a golden boy. And Shedeur Sanders' fans on the Browns aren't old enough to have learned anything from the Brady Quinn experience. It is Shedeur Sanders' literal job to be ready in case goes down. That's his job as a backup quarterback. I don't care about the first team reps. He got reps in practice. He is practicing. Even with all that, the Browns aren't very good, despite what Josina Anderson's glazing of Geno Smith Jr.'s one good pass in the game might have you think. The Browns gave up 13 points in the 4th quarter, and Dylan Gabriel is out this week, meaning Shedeur is going to start, and Max Crosby is going to have a career game against him. At number 26, the Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes was largely effective at slinging the football, though Jaquan McMillan performed like he had a personal vendetta against Mahomes. McMillan had 2 sacks against Mahomes and a critical 3rd quarter interception that led to a Jaleel McLaughlin touchdown. It's truly insane. 1 year after running the table in 1-score games, the table has been run on the Kansas City Chiefs. They are winless in 1-score games. On the bright side, Travis Kelce is still embarking on a strong rebound year, as he had 9 receptions, 91 yards, and he found the end zone. Though there's a legitimate chance this rebound season does not include a playoff run. If so, at least Travis Kelce got to hold 1 ring this season. At number 25, the Detroit Lions. Jared Goff had his struggles this week. He completed 37.8% of his passes, which is the worst completion percentage any quarterback in the NFL not named Justin Fields has had in a start. I mean, sure, the wind caused by Eagles fans yelling slurs may have affected his performance, but you know what? You can't win them all. Goff was 14 for 37 passing, including 2 for 12 to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Horribly inefficient for a team that honestly had plenty of chances. I know there was some controversy surrounding Rocky Yacin's pass interference penalty at the end of the game, and yeah, that was pretty close. But my goodness, you had plenty of chances. The Lions were 0 for 5 on 4th down, and they had 5 penalties as opposed to the Eagles' 9 penalties. It was a miserable night all around for Lions fans and for head coach / new play caller Dan Campbell, who looks like he can tell me what's wrong with my car just by smelling it. At number 24, the Las Vegas Raiders. Anytime you see a "this is Cowboys country" in a stadium that isn't AT&T Stadium, and you think he's not entirely wrong, that's when Raiders fans knew they screwed up. The Raiders let George Pickens walk all over them, as he had 9 receptions for 144 yards and the easiest touchdown you ever did saw. The Raiders' offense, also not great, probably either because the Cowboys went on a shopping spree before the trade deadline, or the Raiders' offense is cheeks no matter who they face. Ashton Jeanty had 7 rushing yards. The Raiders also gave up a safety, which never fails to add insult to injury in a blowout. Geno Smith's only passing touchdown was to Trey Tucker in garbage time, and all of this is to say that Chip Kelly is the NFL's highest paid offensive coordinator. The Raiders are now 2-8, and this year for them has probably gone as poorly as it could have. This loss may be the icing on the cake that a Vegas stripper is probably going to jump out of here in any moment now, actually. Number 23, the Minnesota Vikings. The cracks in JJ McCarthy's game are really starting to show. Even with him being a technically second-year quarterback who got to spend his entire first year learning under Kevin O'Connell and Sam Darnold, he really doesn't seem ready for the NFL. The first 3 quarters for the Vikings were pretty rough as JJ McCarthy led an offense that only got 1 field goal. But the Vikings also had 5 punts and threw 2 interceptions to go along with that. That's not going to win you a lot of games in this league, especially against a team that has one of the more subpar defenses in the NFL. Though McCarthy did turn it on in the 4th quarter, as the Vikings' touchdowns were a lot like Eddie Griffin's rider, a pair of Jordans. That's a deep cut, and if you get that joke, I appreciate you. A Jordan Mason rushing touchdown and a Jordan Addison receiving touchdown. Everything unraveled though, as the Vikings channeled their inner Bengals and let their last-second touchdown against the Bears mean diddly squat. Cairo Santos hit a game-winning field goal against the Vikings, thanks in large part to a critical Devin Duvernay return and Santos's unquestioned ability to avoid the camera cable with his field goal kicks. At number 22, the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals had a record-setting performance in the absolute worst way possible. Jacoby Brissett completed 47 passes, which is the most passes completed in a game by any quarterback in NFL history. Michael Wilson was a beneficiary of nearly a third of them, as he had a whopping 15 catches for 185 yards. Trey McBride also had 10. Nice. The other record they had this year, the most penalties a team has had in a game. 17! That's an astounding total, and I found the list. 6 offensive holds, 2 false starts, 2 illegal shifts, a defensive holding, encroachment, delay of game, illegal contact, illegal formation, unnecessary roughness, and unsportsmanlike conduct. Add that all together, and you have a tired content creator who had to remember a hell of a list. The Cardinals defense just had no answer for the 49ers offense whatsoever. CMC and George Kittle combined for 5 touchdowns, and the Cardinals season just continues to fall apart. Rough vibes, broski. At number 21, the Seattle Seahawks. This was a game Seattle very much could have won. Unfortunately, Sam Darnold's propensity to see ghosts came right back to haunt him. Seattle did a solid job of moving the ball down the field, but man, their mistake-filled game caused Seattle to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. 1 for 4 in the red zone? Oh, how fun. Ethan Evans' punt was about as close to the corner as the DVD logo, and that happened when Seattle needed it to happen the absolute least. That was just insane. There is just no way the Seahawks should have been in a position to win, but this is also a game Sam Darnold can very much bounce back from, as long as he remembers to not channel his inner Jets next time. And number 20, the Tennessee Titans. On the bright side, Cam Ward's improving, as he's shown that the Titans may have a legitimate franchise quarterback. Even with their losing record and shortcomings on the rest of their offense, he's been able to produce at an okay level. Who do the Titans need to draft in the first round next year? Yes. The big dagger for the Titans, though, is that Calvin Ridley is now out for the year with a broken fibula, meaning NFL fans will shout, "Who?" no matter who catches a Cam Ward pass. Okay, I have heard of Van Jefferson before. It's just not good for the Titans right now, but they're also showing signs of not giving up. The culture seems to have improved after Brian Callahan was Jazzy Jeffed out of Nissan Stadium, but losing on a walk-off field goal is never fun. Cam Ward remains the most sacked quarterback in the NFL, and this season feels lost for the Titans. There's a chance they're competitive within Cam Ward's rookie deal, but they need to nail these upcoming drafts. At number 19, the New York Giants. The Giants have officially become the first season to face an elimination scenario this weekend. Yay! If the Giants lose, and either the Cowboys, Vikings, or Seahawks win, Seahawks could also tie, their season is toast. However, there were some okay points for the Giants this weekend. Jameis Winston was serviceable, meaning Mike Kafka didn't have to scramble and put Russell Wilson in. Devin Singletary had 2 rushing touchdowns, proving he will never, ever, ever, ever go away. Isaiah Hodgins was the leading receiver for the Giants, and there's no way you remember who he was. On defense, Brian Burns has quietly been one of the better defensive players in the league, as he had 2 sacks on Jordan Love. On the flip side, Abdul Carter has quietly been a major disappointment this year. For a player who couldn't have seemed like more of a sure thing, Abdul Carter has been really quiet this year. He was actually benched in the opening series due to a coaching decision. This unfortunately was a week where the better team won, though Mike Kafka did an okay job in his first game as interim head coach. Just don't get your hopes up for the rest of the year, and call me if you need mental help. If there's anyone who knows the phrase, "there's always next year," it's a guy who roots for Cincinnati sports teams. At number 18, the New York Jets. This was the hardest team to rank this weekend. Yeah, the scoreboard was not their friend, but they also didn't play an awful game against arguably the hottest team in the league right now. They started off hot as Justin Fields led the Jets quickly down the field for an opening touchdown, but from then on, it was damn near radio silence. The Jets named Tyrod Taylor the starter over Justin Fields, meaning Aaron Glenn no longer has to mute Woody Johnson's phone calls. The game wasn't a total loss though, especially considering how depleted the team is. John Mechie scored. Adonai Mitchell didn't drop the ball at the 1-yard line. The run game was serviceable. The Jets were able to hold Drake May in check enough to the point that he only kind of looked like an MVP, though they did give up 3 touchdowns to TreVeyon Henderson. Just can't wait to see what they do with all those first-round picks. Number 17, the Washington Commanders. The Dolphins are weirdly kinda good right now, and the Commanders very nearly beat them. However, it just wasn't enough, and the lost season continues. Even with the defense's astronomical struggles this year, they did an okay job at holding the Dolphins' offense in check, as Tua didn't throw a single touchdown, and the Dolphins' only rushing touchdown came courtesy of Ollie Gordon. How did they handle Devon Achane? Well, they kept him out of the end zone, and that's about all the good they can say in terms of how they defended him. It just wasn't enough though, as Marcus Mariota couldn't get the needle moving enough, and his interception on the first play of overtime pretty much sealed Washington's fate. Also, if your kicker makes only 2 out of his 4 field goal attempts, and you lose by 1 field goal in overtime, that's enough to lose your job. And he did. Matt Gay fired. He on the 49ers now. At number 16, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Oh, they scored a lot of points, but they gave up a lot of points too. Sean Tucker was king of the castle this weekend, as he accounted for 140 yards from scrimmage and 3 of the Bucs' 4 touchdowns. Even if and when Bucky Irving comes back, which at this point feels like 2027, Sean Tucker has absolutely positively earned reps. The defense just absolutely got their asses blown off by Josh Allen this weekend, even with them picking him off twice. You never want to face Josh Allen after he has a bad game. They allowed 6 touchdowns to the Bills' signal caller, 3 on the ground and 3 in the air. Bad turnovers and a miserable defensive performance absolutely did this team no favors. Even with that, there's still a half game up in the NFC South on... Wait, how? Before I go any further, if you like what you've seen so far, subscribe to the channel. I do plenty of comedic shorts. We generally have a good time. If you're already subscribed, thank you for continuing to watch. And now, back to the video. At number 15, the Houston Texans. The Texans are 500, and they sure as hell played like it. Granted, CJ Stroud is out, meaning it's Davis Mills' job to be the occasionally fun and incredibly bald dynamo he always has been. The game was about as fun and exciting as watching two people debate Shedeur Sanders, but luckily for the Texans, they came away with another win in a defensive slugfest. Good work for the Texans, though they are in a short week. And CJ Stroud and Jalen Petre will be out again. Elsewhere, Joe Mixon's out for the year, meaning Nick Chubb and Woody Marks will now take on the role of completely ignoring me in downtown Cincinnati when I tell them I'm a huge fan. Number 14, the Green Bay Packers. Honestly, the Packers are kind of lucky they won this game. It was much closer than it should have been considering the matchup and the circumstances. Though they had a lot of players that didn't do wonderful, there were some players that stepped up. Will Fuller V had 2 receiving touchdowns, which were the first he's had in 13 months. Micah Parsons, 1.5 sacks. Nice work. Emmanuel Wilson came in for Josh Jacobs and performed pretty serviceably, as he found the end zone twice, once on a touchdown and once on a 2-point conversion. Josh Jacobs' status for this week is uncertain, though the Packers could get Jaden Reed back anytime now. Activate Jaden Reed. You know you want to. Activate Jaden Reed. At number 13, the Chicago Bears. Brian Flores' defense had the Bears' number in this game pretty much the whole time. It was to the point that Caleb Williams looked genuinely pissed upon Cairo Santos kicking the game winner. Like in a we really didn't deserve to win that game kind of way. The offense was pretty inefficient, though the defense had JJ McCarthy's number pretty much the entire game, even though he wasn't sacked once. This team wants to legitimately contend. They can't give their fans heart attacks on a consistent basis, even though their fan base looks like heart attacks are a weekly occurrence. And number 12, the Baltimore Ravens. This honestly was a game that neither team deserved to win. It was an ugly game from start to finish. Lamar Jackson had one of the worst games he's had this year, and the Ravens survived because Dylan Gabriel got a concussion and Bronny Manziel came in relief and was awful. The rushing offense for the Ravens dominated this game as Derrick Henry and Mark Andrews each ran one in. Mark Andrews was the nail in the coffin for the Browns, as he had a 35-yard rushing touchdown, which was the first rushing touchdown of his career. Much like a Shedeur Sanders routine completion, Mark Andrews' sneak on a sneak was something that nobody saw coming and will be talked about for years to come. The only thing that matters for the Ravens right now is the fact that they've won 4 in a row and they continue to ride the wave in a division that's much worse than everyone anticipated. And number 11, the Philadelphia Eagles. Now here's a guy who had to call a Sunday night game that absolutely sucked if you expected any offense whatsoever. The defensive line performed great, even though they lost half their net worth to free agency this offseason. But they got Jalen Phillips at the trade deadline, and he has been a revelation. Jalen Phillips had 1 sack on Jared Goff, to which AJ Brown said, "That should have been my sack." On offense, though, inefficient once again. How cool is that? Jalen Hurts targeted AJ Brown 11 times, I assume, for his own safety. That should lead to a lot less tension in the locker room. Okay, I stand corrected. Elsewhere, Saquon Barkley showed that the Madden curse can really affect an entire offense. So shout out to Wizard of Foz 1 on Reddit for making me laugh out loud with the comment where he said, Vic Fangio should kick Kevin Patullo in the nuts every day until the offense improves. That was very funny. Number 10, the LA Rams. The Rams can breathe a sigh of relief this week. Despite the fact that Sam Darnold threw 4 picks, fortune was still on the Rams' side. Ethan Evans cucked the Seahawks with a perfect 4th quarter punt, which is ironic since it was his balls that went to the corner. With that, the game had no business being as close as it was. The Rams' offense did just enough, but their inefficiency on 3rd down, 2 for 11, thank you for asking, allowed Seattle to keep the game close despite the fact that Sam Darnold had his career high in interceptions. Even with the ugly win, the Rams took over the division lead, and they prevented Cooper Kupp from winning his revenge game. And number 9, the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins have won 3 out of the last 4. Whoa. They escaped Spain with a victory, and Mike McDaniel is undefeated since Chris Greer has been fired. Devon Achane was the star of the show on offense, as he had 21 rushes for 120 yards. On defense, holy shit, Jordan Brooks had 20 tackles. That broke the previous season high set by... Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Nevertheless, Miami has pretty good vibes entering the bye. They got to fly home from Spain with a win, and Mike McDaniel's job, in addition to Tua's brain, gets to survive another week. At number 8, the Denver Broncos. Huge win at the last second. Bo Nix led a massive game-winning drive that included major completions to Cortland Sutton, Troy Franklin, and a javelin that struck the Chiefs' playoff chances directly in the heart. Bo Nix wasn't perfect, but he was really good when it mattered. He was a lot like me, except without the cripplingly low self-esteem. Jaquan McMillan is going to get a key to the city of Denver after sacking Patrick Mahomes twice and intercepting a Mahomes pass in the red zone. Huge game for a guy that was in the running for Defensive Player of the Week. Sorry, Myles Garrett stans. I know how great he is, but give the other guy a chance. This was a game that Denver desperately needed to win for division purposes and to prove themselves, and that they did. Will Lutz kicked a field goal as time expired, and Denver moved to 9-2, while Kansas City moved to an even 500. At number 7, the Buffalo Bills. No team needed, and I mean needed, to win this week and to rebound this week as much as the Buffalo Bills did. Keon Coleman was a healthy scratch, and they got destroyed by the Dolphins a week prior. And boy did they come back. Josh Allen had only the 3rd instance in NFL history where a player threw for and ran in 3 touchdowns. He was 2 of them, and Otto Graham was 1 of them, and Otto Graham couldn't even marry Haley Steinfeld. No, I don't think so. It was a shootout like we all expected, but the Bills came out victorious. Tyrell Shavers was the leading receiver, and he caught a touchdown, as did James Cook and Ty Johnson. With the harsh winter approaching, it's only a matter of time before Bills fans start throwing snowballs at McCole Hardman. It was a huge win, and now they're only a game and a half behind the Patriots for the division lead. This postseason's gonna be fun as hell. At number 6, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Congrats, I guess. The Steelers finally became the non-villains in the Steelers-Bengals game. Their first half against the Bengals started off about as pedestrian as it possibly could have, with their lone touchdown coming courtesy of Kenneth Gainwell. Then in the second half, all of my dreams died on the spot. Kyle Duggar picked 6 Joe Flacco. James Pierre channeled his inner Isaiah Rodgers and ran back a Noah Fant fumble for a touchdown. Jalen Ramsey was that thing that Jamar Chase Hawk Tuah on, and Chase was kept in check the entire game by the Steelers defense. Darnell Washington had no regard for human life against a Bengals defense that had no regard for tackling technique. Though vibes aren't perfect, and it was mostly due to injuries. Aaron Rodgers has a small fracture in his wrist. Jaylen Warren hurt his ankle, and his status for this upcoming week is all but certain. Even with all those, they maintain possession of first place, but the Baltimore Ravens are hot and sneaking up right behind them. Just take what you guys can get at this point. I hate you, Pittsburgh. At number 5, the Carolina Panthers. You guys, they finally did it! Bryce Young threw for 448 passing yards, which was his career high. It eclipsed his previous career high by 120 yards. And it was only the 13th game of his career where he topped 200 yards. For reference, he has more games where he's thrown for 150 or fewer yards. I just hope that Tedero McMillan was the beneficiary of a lot of those. Oh my God, they actually did it. 8 catches, 130 yards, 2 tutties, and good Lord, I hope this continues. I'm a Bengals guy, but I'd almost buy his jersey. T-Mac had a Big Mac of a game. My guy. As a result of the offensive explosion and Ryan Fitzgerald's once again clutch kicking, the Panthers are currently 6-5, and more importantly, merely a half game out of first place. They swept the Falcons this year, and Bryce Young has shown that he can, in fact, be the future of this organization. Dave Canales is onto something. Bryce Young was probably never asked. The organization was just a little too cautious with him. What a way to pull out a victory for a team that is honestly incredibly easy to root for right now. At number 4, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Well then, didn't see that one coming. The Jags suffered a brutal loss last week against Houston, and we're like, yeah, we're not having that again. With that, they blew the Chargers to smithereens. The team's rushing attack did an excellent job at carrying the offense. Travis Etienne and Bashal Tutu combined for 147 of the Jags' 192 rushing yards. You know what, LaQuinn Allen, I'll give you your stars too. Jacksonville played a remarkably clean game. 1 accepted penalty and 1 turnover, and they both happened within 2 plays of each other. After that, it was a flawless game top to bottom. With this win, the Jags are now currently 3-0 against the AFC West, proving this season is just weird as hell. Excellent work this weekend. At number 3, the San Francisco 49ers. The long-awaited return of Brock Purdy has energized the 49ers, and my goodness did it show. Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle were the stars of the show. But wait! There's more. Yes, Sky Moore. He started off the game with a 98-yard kickoff return. Though he didn't score on that play, he did get them to the 1-yard line. They scored in the very next play, and the tone was immediately set. In that tone, they were going to force the Cardinals to play from behind the entire game. It was a complete game by a once again good team. Brock Purdy didn't show any signs of rust or injuries to his toe, and he showed the injury is far behind him. Though the pass defense let Jacoby Brissett throw all over them until his arm fell off, it didn't matter, as the 49ers capitalized on the Cardinals' woefully mistake-filled game to take home a much needed victory. At number 2, the New England Patriots. The Patriots continue to be arguably the hottest team in the NFL right now. Travion Henderson became 3vion Henderson as he found the end zone, 3 times. Drake May continued to cement his MVP case by winning and doing well, though Travion is the true star of this game. 3 touchdowns. They started Ramondre Stevenson over him? Lord. After the Jets' opening drive of the game where they scored a touchdown, the Patriots then played the much better game from then on. The Patriots did excellent work, and they've clinched a winning record on the season. Elsewhere, Cam Newton called Drake May fool's gold, which is ironic for a guy who dresses like he just opened a fake treasure chest. Oh boy. The number 1 vibes for the week, the Dallas Cowboys. This was a win for Marshawn Kneyland. This was a win for Dallas. And this was a win for their playoff hopes that are hanging on by a thread. The defense looked significantly improved with the additions of Quinnen Williams and Logan Wilson. Geno Smith took 4 sacks, and Donovan Ezaraku got a safety. It was truly dominant from start to finish, and it's genuinely shocking that Donovan Ezaraku fell to the second round of the draft. I know he's undersized, but if a guy puts up stats in college while undersized, that means he's good at football. Dak Prescott absolutely slinged the ball at will against the Raiders, with George Pickens, CeeDee Lamb, Jake Ferguson, and Ryan Flournoy all finding the end zone. The best way to help this team fight through the passing of Marshawn Kneyland was to go into Vegas and absolutely steamroll the Raiders. It was a statement win, and a win that was a tribute for Marshawn Kneyland that provides optimism for the Cowboys and their fans. For now. And that'll do it for this week's video. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you like this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel for more fun content, and stay tuned for more sports content that you didn't ask for.